Welcome to Tuesdays with Gary on May 19th, 2020. And today we're here to share some more knowledge with you about doing real estate in the COVID era. So today I've got a special guest. I've got my friend Joe Humlick, who is a home inspector that I use a lot with my business. Welcome, Joe. How are you today?
Hi, Gary. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
It's good to see you. So doing business in the COVID era, right?
Yeah, it's pretty different, isn't it?
So we've all had to learn different ways to communicate with our customers, communicate with each other with the intent of keeping everyone safe and making sure we can reduce the curve, reduce the transmission of the virus. So Joe, how are you handling with the lockdown right now?
Well, I mean, so far I've been pretty isolated. So most of my inspections, probably 50% of the homes are vacant. So
Okay.
I actually, I can get the lockbox code from the realtor, or I'm affiliated with the real estate board. I actually have a super key, Gary, and I can get into any house. Typically, like if the sellers are living in the home, typically they leave while I do the inspection, but I typically show up, prepared that someone is there. So I do wear a mask, gloves, booty, the whole shebang. So we're good to go on that.
So it all starts with a contract, and the contract has, as part of its terms and conditions, whether or not an inspection occurs. And typically with our group, we try to provide a contract with a 5 to 7 day inspection period. Is that a reasonable time frame to provide an inspector these days with the COVID virus prevalent?
Oh yeah, definitely. The initial contact, Gary, I can usually get you, say you called me right now, I could probably get you in within 24 hours, if not 48 at the latest. So.
Excellent. So I know when we get offers in our properties, we have some agents that haven't gotten used to doing the COVID precautions yet, and they typically extend the inspection period to 10 or 12 days. We automatically cut it back with an explanation that we know inspectors they can get in quicker. So Joe, once we have a contract and we have an inspection period of 5 to 7 days, what happens next? Do you typically talk with the customer? Does the realtor contact you? How do you get in play?
Okay, typically the realtor refers the client to me, and we talk directly. I mean, 90% of the time, and then we can discuss price, and we can discuss day and times, and we go from there. So say I scheduled an appointment for tomorrow at 3:00. Sometimes in normal days, the buyer likes to be there during the inspection, but sometimes the buyer will show up at the end of the inspection, and I'm wearing a mask, gloves, and they are as well, because I generally like to walk people through the home inspection, after I get done completely, and just show them any defects, any defaults, anything like that. It's just a lot easier, Gary. Thanks.
Excellent. So as you go through the home, can you give us an overview of the things that you're looking for? And in particular, a lot of the contracts we do down here are as-is contracts. Most realtors are transactional agents. What are the things that you're looking for to point out to the buyer to fully protect their health and safety?
Okay, so I mean, are you asking what is involved in a full home inspection, or just the safety part?
Well, let's talk about both. So let's talk about the full home inspection report or the process, and let's also talk about the health and safety issues, because if I'm your realtor and it's an as-is contract, I'm not much interested in addressing, if it's not health or safety related, anything with the seller.
Sure, I get it. What's going on now, Gary, is what I'm discovering is a lot of homes, they'll sign a contract, a buyer will sign a contract, and I'll get there and the roof is at the end of its life. I'm really running into that a lot. So I try to educate my realtor friends, do your homework first, before you even call me, because I don't charge them to come out, but it's just really discouraging for the client. So back to the home inspection itself. So typically I'm there by myself. No, I don't make a sandwich or anything like that while I'm there, but yeah. So anyhow, the main concern obviously is the main structure of the house, the roof, the integrity of the structure, air conditioner, that's a big ticket item, water heater, plumbing, so on and so forth. I mean, obviously every house is different. I do a lot of new construction homes up in Boca for GL Homes for their new clients. And a lot of them, they won't let the buyer be there. So I have to be there by myself, obviously, but they want it for another reason. But there's things where I use my drone because the GL Homes, they won't let me go up on the roof at all. So I'm like, well, I have a drone. But my drone works very well. And we test everything from electrical, plumbing, so on and so forth. And you would not believe brand new homes. You wouldn't believe the defects that I found. So.
I've sold a couple of those homes in Parkland, and brand new homes with all kinds of defects.
Yeah.
And the listing agent wanted to let the warranty on the home cover it, and we simply wouldn't allow that. So let's go back to talking about the roof. Let's talk about using the drone and how you assess the age and longevity of a roof, Joe, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, every roof, like a shingle roof, we call it an insurance standard. It's typically 25 years. Or a flat roof, a rolled roof is typically 15 years of life. So before I go out to the inspection, I generally either go online or I will call the building department to find out exactly how old this roof is. So let's say the roof is only 10 years old, then, we're good to go. But if the roof is like 23 years old, this is where I contact the realtor and say, hey, the roof has no life on it. Do you want me to proceed? So that's how we go on that one, Gary.
And typically, you're used to dealing with like Joseph Dominguez at Dunham Insurance, who's going to be insuring that roof. What are you seeing the insurance standard shifting to right now, Joe?
Well, right now, believe it or not, insurance companies, there are a couple carriers pulling out of Florida, and they're actually lowering the standards. I mean, even a 25-year shingle roof, if it's after 15 years, Gary, your insurance is going to go up. It's going to go through the roof. Sorry.
Go through the roof. Yeah, well, so we certainly hear that from Joseph in the group that insurance rates and premiums have been going up. Mm-hmm. And of course, we talked about the large geographical base of the United States, not just Florida, in determining those rates. So let's move on and talk about the drone and let's bring that into one of your gadgets that you use for inspecting a house, Joe. Okay.
Yeah, I love my new drone. It's not cheapy. It's definitely an investment. So I actually, it's actually a safety device as well, Gary, because I'm not risking my life going up on a 2-story roof. And the photos are incredible. I mean, I can zoom in on anything. I could count, if there were missing tiles, so on and so forth, as if I was on the roof. And also, speaking of tiles, I'm not walking on a tile roof in chance where I might break one, especially the ceramic barrel tile. You don't even want to walk on those. So I'm actually a licensed commercial pilot. So I'm actually certified for the drone. So if anybody asks me, are you licensed to do this? Yes, I am. So
do you have to actually make a call to the FAA as far as when you're planning to fly, or are there any restrictions on where you can fly?
Yeah, well, I mean, typically if I go over about 300 or 400 feet, if I get into any type of airspace, especially near an airport, then I would have to contact the FAA. But I mean, I'm only going 10 feet above the house, and I'm only up in the air for maybe 5 minutes. So we're good there.
Okay. And so in addition to the roofing inspection, you are also doing different systems inspections. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Again, we check the age of the air conditioner. Obviously, we know down in South Florida, air conditioners, when they hit 15 years, they're pretty much nearing the end of their life. Nothing worse than having a client move into the house and the AC goes out the week after they move in. So it's my job to determine how old the AC system is and how it's functioning. And I actually can use my thermal device to check the temperature coming out of the air conditioning registers, and I can check to see if there's any leaks up in the attic. I can just point my my thermal imaging. If there's any blue like clouds looking, I can detect any type of air conditioning leaks, Gary.
So you're not only seeing the temperature, but you're also seeing evidence of moisture. Is that correct?
Yes, this is correct. I can actually I use two pieces. One, the equipment here, especially if I see any type of mold-like substance, say like in a bathroom or whatever, it'll kind of let me look through walls. It'll pick up hot water, like say there was a leak behind a wall. It'll pick that up a lot easier. But I also have, which is this camera here. If the seller will let me, I can just drill a little tiny hole, and this thing has an SD card and it has a light on it. I can actually go into a wall to see if there is a leak, a possible leak, which I have found and actually taken photos with this. So pretty handy stuff.
That's a nice gadget to have, and certainly a gadget that buyers should really appreciate.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit more about plumbing, and let's talk this time about the exterior of the house. We have a lot of houses down here that were built in the 50s and 60s, and accordingly, they have a lot of galvanized pipes. Have you had buyers request a scope of the galvanized pipes, and how do you handle that?
No, not really. I mean, if I see them, I mean, typically if it is a galvanized pipe, Gary, it's usually just the vent stack, which is not really, it's not going to hurt anything. But if I see galvanized, which is actually in the water system, then yeah, I'll report that and recommend replacing it as well.
Okay. And so as you go through the house, Joe, tell us how you start your inspection and the systems that you start to inspect. What's your procedure?
Okay. Typically, I start on the outside of the house, obviously, look for any structural cracks, look at the fascia boards, see if there's any moisture damage. And I typically have every home inspection, I try to have a termite company there as well. They generally show up, while I'm inside. So we stay away from each other. So once I do the outside, I'll start in the garage. We check out the electric panel, water heater, and then I proceed to the attic. We, take our photos for what we need for the wind mitigation. And then I proceed to the kitchen. And then once I do the kitchen, obviously we check all the appliances, check every single outlet, and every light fixture, every window, obviously that we can get to. So it's pretty thorough, very thorough.
So when you're doing a review of the electrical systems, we oftentimes, as the realtors, see the inside box, whether it's a Zinsco or Federal Pacific. What would be your best advice to buyers who go into a house, they get a box, it's a Zinsco box. What do you typically recommend?
Well, I typically recommend replacing it. Maybe we could get the seller to replace it, but I mean, it's not a necessary thing like it was a couple of years ago. You can still get insurance, Gary, but I typically recommend, listen, when you contact your insurance agent, ask them how much money they would save a year if they replace that panel for, say, $1,500.
Right. Yeah. So typically, as the listing agent, we go in, if we see a Zinsco box or a Federal Pacific, we look up to make sure that model is in fact considered a hazardous box, and we make the recommendation right then to the seller that they consider replacing it before the inspection. Sure. Because we know inspectors like you are going to come in and find it, and it's a matter of, is it going to be less expensive doing it before you go to close, or is it going to be more expensive if you have to set aside money for the closing on an escrow basis?
Sure. And, if the seller, we do the pre-inspections as well, Gary. I've helped out sellers, even just on the flat roof, even if they just put like a coating on it, we can get extra life, for insurance. Otherwise, it wouldn't pass insurance. I tell them about the electric panel, and, it's pretty much saved them money. so far.
Right. So one of the things you mentioned already is that you have a termite inspector as a separate inspection that goes on,
Mhm.
and it's South Florida. We have damp climate. We have lots of damp spaces. What's your experience in finding termites or evidence of termites in our houses?
Well, if you don't have them now, you're going to have them sooner or later. You know, a lot of the homes down here are concrete block construction, as we know. Typically, what the termite, it you know, the soffit vents that are under the eaves, if there's holes in those, that's typically a good way for termites to get in. The termites usually go after the softwood, like the fascia board or, you know, door jambs, so on and so forth. But, you know, for the cost of a termite inspection, my company only charges me $45. It's
Wow,
and yeah, it's kind of a peace of mind, Gary. So, you know, yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah.
So tell us about your entire procedure then. Let's continue through the house and how you look at the house and report back on it.
Okay, well, again, okay, we'll just talk about plumbing. So I check all the faucets, make sure hot and cold works. I mean, you know, back to the new construction homes, I, I I counted, I mean, countless faucets that the hot and cold were reversed. Um, Also, you know, I look for leaks, so on and so forth, and I definitely make sure that the hot works in the shower and the cold works in the shower. Because when I first started in this business, I just turned the water on, you know, the shower valve, and the people moved in, and there wasn't any hot water, so I ended up paying for a plumber. So,
Right, right.
yeah,
So it's nothing like on the job training, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
We have a caller from Jackie Vidal Waggy, who's at our Weston office, and she's asking about polybutylene plumbing. Can
sure.
you tell us what to look for and what the problems are with that?
Okay, so basically, any house or home that was built, you know, in the mid 80s, even, you know, early 90s, I just, it perks my ears up because it tells me to look for polybutylene piping. That would be one scary uh, lawsuit if I ever inspected a home and I missed that. So far, I've found it. I found it every time. But again, this is where buyers want to hire an inspector. I'm not saying that just for my own good, but we're looking out for your own good, because I've inspected homes where it did have the polybutylene piping, and it would have cost $10,000-15,000 to replace it. So polybutylene pipe. I just did a home in Cape Coral over the weekend, and for a friend of mine, and the whole house, it was a big 2,500 square foot house. The whole house had to be replumbed because it had the polybutylene piping. Pretty
Wow,
scary.
that sounds like an expensive job. Do you have an estimate as far as what that would cost?
Yeah, I mean, say a regular 3 bedroom, 2 bath, you know, you're probably looking at about $10,000-15,000, Gary. So
Okay, all right.
yeah.
So you go. Have we hit all the systems, Joe? Have we gone through? We went through AC. We went through the electrical. We went through the plumbing. We talked about the roof. What else can you share with us about the
Yeah.
inspection?
Why don't we talk about the insurance inspections, Gary, the 4-point and the wind mitigation?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you'll find out soon enough. Insurance companies that are pulling out, you're going to need either a new 4-point inspection and wind mitigation. The only time you need a 4-point inspection typically is if the home is 30 years or older. Okay, so 1990 to 2020, you won't need one, but it depends
Right.
on financing as well. But the 4-point is the roof, the electrical, the HVAC, and the plumbing. What the insurance companies are looking for is how many years of life are on the roof, the AC, the water heater, the year of the plumbing. Because you know as well as I do, a lot of our homes down here in Fort Lauderdale are built in the 60s. So, but when people remodel their kitchens or bathrooms, I try to get a close date to when they remodeled everything. And as far as the wind mitigation, you're going to have one. you don't have to, but if you want to spend triple the money, it behoove you to get a wind mitigation. And a wind mitigation is basically a hurricane inspection. We're just seeing how safe your house is if there is a hurricane, what it could withstand. Okay.
And typically, as a part of that wind mitigation, are you looking at how the roof is attached and how it's tied down, or the different levels of secure roofs?
Oh yeah, definitely. The older houses, pre 1950s, they have what's called, it's a tonneau where the roof truss is anchored to the roof wall or to the wall with just toenails. That's like the worst. The best you want is what's called a single wrap, where it's a metal strap that goes over the wood truss that's concreted into the wall, and that's the best discount you can get. Also, higher discounts. The style of the roof, Gary. If it's a hip roof, you're going to get more discounts, and also shutters and impact windows. But when you do replace, every single opening needs to be 100% opening protection before you can even get credits. So that means if your garage door is not hurricane rated, but you installed $30,000 in impact windows, you're not going to get the credit, unfortunately.
So it's every single opening has to be hurricane equivalent or hurricane proof. We've had a couple of customers like that say, well, I did everything but the back door.
Yeah.
And the insurance company turned them down and they did not provide them the discount.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen people, Gary, spend $30,000-$40,000 on, on impact windows. And I show up, they didn't replace the garage door. So.
Yeah. I know. It's amazing. Sometimes what seems obvious to us after seeing it all the time is not so obvious to the casual home seller or the home buyer. So I got to ask you a question. A home inspector can be a realtor's best friend, or they can be our worst enemy, because the realtor wants to make sure that the deal goes through. How do you work with your buyers to ensure that they can ameliorate their fears and reconcile any kind of problems that are safety issues or other issues in the house so the deal can actually be achieved?
That's a good question, Gary. We walk a fine line, don't we? So, working with buyer's agents, obviously you don't want to lose a deal for them. I never have, but if I see something, I typically take the realtor outside and I explain, look, this is what's going on here. I don't want to, I'm just letting you know ahead of time, but I'm just, protecting myself and your client. So I understand what you're saying. That was a good question. Thank you.
So it's an interesting scenario, and I know that typically we like to live in the solution, and if there's a problem, we want to know how to solve it the most efficient way, the cheapest way, so that no one gets hurt, neither the buyer nor the seller, or maybe there's a little pain by each party, so that we can ensure that the deal actually gets closed. Joe, you've given us a lot of information today. I got to ask you, how did you come up with the name Inspector Gadget? What's the genesis of that?
When I first started, Gary, actually a friend of mine, I started with a franchise. It was a Canadian-based franchise down here in Pompano Beach called A Buyer's Choice Home Inspections. And they were just killing me on royalties. And I don't know, for some reason I was listening to a commercial or whatever, and I tried it, and I've had the name ever since. And according to my attorney, I'm just fine. So thank you.
It's a great name, and I think in this day and age of technology, that a lot of people like me really appreciate that. So, Joe, once you get your inspection done, you deliver that inspection. How do you go over those results with the buyer and the realtor?
Well, typically it's PDF style with all color photos, so on and so forth. And basically anything that I take a photo of is something that there's a defection, and but I'll send it to both the realtor and the buyer, and I'll have the buyer. We'll just go through the report together over the phone. During this day and age, but before COVID, I always enjoyed. I liked it when the buyer was there, so I can, after I did the inspection, I can just walk them through the whole house, and they're a little more at ease that instead of being over the phone, like a long distance buyer or something.
So I know that some people have actually gone over those reports with using a Zoom type of meeting
Sure.
to make sure everything's thoroughly understood. I got another question with regards to inspection reporting. Um, I'm used to seeing an inspection report, a problem is identified, the solution is identified, and then a wide range of dollar value is an estimate provided. Where do those numbers come from, and are they retail numbers, or how are they derived?
Well, I mean, typically each realtor is different, Gary. I mean, some want prices, some don't. Some want me to leave the prices out. Um, just being in the industry for so many years, I know how much it costs to replace a water heater or an air conditioner or even a roof. But what I can do is I typically call a contractor friend of mine, like William Roberts, and ask him, hey, what would be a general price to replace this size roof, so on and so forth. So, and I do provide a range. I mean, there's, different companies that charge different prices. So.
Right, and I've seen your numbers compared to other people, and your range is much tighter. I've seen others that have a real wide range, and I think, where'd the number come from?
Like $1, yeah, $1 to 10,000, yeah.
$1 to 10,000 is a big range to me, yeah. So you've really given us a lot of information. As if you're a first-time home buyer right now, is there any advice that you could give to that first-time home buyer? And I'm going to come back to that same question if you're looking to sell your home. But let's deal with the first-time home buyer first.
Okay, the biggest thing is the electric panel, the roof, the age of the roof. Like I've done sessions, at Broward College. I used to do every other Saturday in front of like 30 new home buyers. And I would typically, when you're looking for a house, the age of the roof, the electric panel, the air conditioner, and the biggest thing is the roof. So, and the electric part, and I talked to him about insurance issues, so on and so forth. But that was a good question. Thank you.
So let's flip it around because we at the Gary Lanham Group, we typically are listing agents, and we try to talk to our sellers about doing a home inspection. What's your biggest when you talk to a seller on why it's important to do that? Give me your pitch.
Okay, typically, I'm not really looking for cosmetic stuff, Gary. The pre-inspection is more like a 4-point inspection. Just the meat and potatoes. Like the roof. Say the shingle roof is good, but the flat roof is at the end of its life. But there are economical ways of taking care of that to where if the home inspector does come in, oh yeah, he's going to pass that flat roof because you put a sealant on it. The electrical part, I mean, that depends, on the buyer, but back in the day, if somebody had a Federal Pacific panel, I mean, you just pretty much walked away. So you remember those days, right?
Oh yeah, and aluminum wires.
Oh yeah,
in the attic, and the cost of the price of rewiring the entire house. I've lost deals that way.
Yeah. Believe it or not, there are a couple neighborhoods that I still find the aluminum wiring, which is pretty scary. There was one area, it's like around Tamarack. There's a whole community, and it's like, oh God, so I especially keep a close eye out on the aluminum wiring. So yeah.
Well, Joe, I can't tell you how grateful I am for you to join me today. How was your experience doing something like this?
I really enjoyed it, Gary. Thank you for having me. Definitely.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. And again, if anybody who's a first-time home buyer and you need an inspection need, please give Joe a call. We'll display his phone number once again, so it's easy access. He can be reached at 954-295-5240. Joe is in my arsenal of people that do home inspections. I can tell you he's one of the best in the city, and you won't be disappointed. Similarly, if you're looking to sell your home and you want a home inspection so you can anticipate what the inspector might find, feel free to give Joe a call as well to look at your 4-point aspects. We're looking at the roof. We're looking at your systems. We want to make sure that you're selling a safe property and you know what the defects are ahead of time. Because in the state of Florida, it's better to disclose all problems and defects so that you can avoid future lawsuit. Joe, thank you so much for being with us today. I look forward to doing some additional business with you, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.
And everybody, I'll see you next week. We'll be with Maxine Gomez, Dry Tech, 24-hour service and mold remediation to try to make sure that we're doing real estate well in the COVID era. Until then, I'll see you again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.